You paying $350,000 for your daughter's house? Only to be told you're not welcome at Christmas dinner? What would you do? I made a decision that left everyone speechless. Stay with me because you won't believe how this story ends. It was still dark outside. It's a kind of darkness that makes you question if morning will ever come. I was deep in a dream, somewhere on a sun-drenched beach in Florida. The waves gently lapping at my feet, the air warm and salty. And most importantly, there wasn't a single soul around to ask me for anything. No one needed a casserole, a ride to soccer practice, or a check for the mortgage. Just me, the sand, and the sound of peace and quiet. I could almost taste the freedom. Then, as if the universe had a sense of humor, my phone pinged. That sharp, insistent sound cut through my dream like a chainsaw through butter. I groaned, fumbling for my glasses on the nightstand. Knocking over my water bottle in the process, typical. I squinted at the glowing screen, my eyes still half glued shut with sleep. There it was, a text from my daughter, Melissa, sent at 5:03 a.m. Now, let me tell you, nothing good ever comes from a text at that hour. It's either an emergency, a butt dial, or, as I was about to find out, it's a message that would change everything. I tapped the message open, my heart already thumping a little faster. Maybe she needed help with the kids. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she just wanted to say, "I love you." A mother can dream, right? But no. Instead, I read, "Mom, I know you paid $350,000 for this house, but Janet doesn't want you at Christmas dinner." I blinked. Once, twice, 3 times. Was I still dreaming? Was this some kind of joke? I read it again, slower this time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less absurd. But there it was, plain as day. I paid for the house, but I wasn't welcome at the table. Was this a new holiday tradition, kick out the person who paid the mortgage? Maybe next year they'd ask me to shovel the driveway but not come inside for cocoa. I sat up in bed, the sheets tangled around my legs, my heart pounding in my chest. I half expected Ashton Kutcher to jump out from behind my closet door and yell, "You've been punked!" But no, this was real life. And let me tell you, nothing wakes you up faster than a little betrayal with your morning coffee. I stared at the message, my mind racing. I remembered the day I handed Melissa and her husband, Ryan, the keys to this house. The look of relief on their faces. The tears in Melissa's eyes as she hugged me and whispered, "Thank you. Mom, we couldn't have done this without you." I remembered the months of paperwork, the endless phone calls with the bank, the way I dipped into my retirement savings because, well, that's what mothers do. We give, we sacrifice. We put everyone else first, and we do it with a smile most of the time. And now? Here I was being told by text, no less, that I wasn't wanted at Christmas dinner. Not because I'd done something wrong, not because I'd started a family feud, but because my daughter's mother-in-law didn't want me there. Janet, who, let's be honest, never liked me much to begin with. Janet, who once told me my green bean casserole was a little too adventurous for her taste. Who knew slivered almonds could be so controversial? I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: hurt, anger, disbelief, and, if I'm being honest, a little bit of amusement. Was this really happening? Was I being uninvited from Christmas in the house I paid for? I almost laughed. Almost. But then the hurt settled in, deep and heavy. Like a stone in my chest, I thought about all the times I'd gone out of my way to make the holidays special. The hours spent baking cookies, wrapping presents, decorating the tree. The way I'd always made sure everyone felt welcome, even when I was exhausted or stressed or just plain over it. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made, the things I'd given up so Melissa and her family could have a better life. And now I was being told I wasn't wanted, not even for one meal. I looked around my quiet bedroom, the early morning light just starting to creep through the blinds. I could hear the faint hum of the heater, the soft snoring of my old dog Murphy at the foot of the bed. For a moment, I felt completely alone, not just in my house, but in my own family. It was a strange, hollow feeling, one I hadn't felt in years. But then something shifted. Maybe it was the absurdity of the situation, or maybe it was the years of putting everyone else first, finally catching up to me. I felt a spark of something, anger, maybe, or resolve. I wasn't sure yet. But I knew one thing. I was done being the family doormat. I was done letting other people decide my worth, my place at the table, my role in their lives. I set my phone down, took a deep breath, and let the silence settle around me. I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew one thing for sure. This Christmas was going to be different. And for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that. I sat there in the dim light of my bedroom, phone in hand, staring at Melissa's message as if it might suddenly morph into something more reasonable. My mind raced with all the things I could say. I could have gone full Mama Bear, let's be honest. I've done it before. I could have fired off a string of angry emojis, or maybe found that perfect gif of a woman flipping a table, hair flying, eyes blazing. I could have written a novel's worth of disappointment, reminding her of every sacrifice, every late-night phone call, every time I dropped everything to help her out. But instead, I just typed 2 little letters. Okay. And then I hit send.y. Because sometimes the best move is the quiet one. The one that makes everyone else wonder what you're up to. The one that says, I see you, and I'm not playing your game. Let's be honest, I was wondering what I was up to myself. I'd never been the type to just let things slide, but something about this moment felt different. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the realization that I'd been bending over backwards for so long. I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. I set my phone down and let out a long, slow breath. The house was still, the only sound the gentle whir of the heater and the soft snoring of my old dog, Murphy, curled up at the foot of the bed. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. The down payment on the house, the endless babysitting, the casseroles I'd made for every family gathering, each one a little love letter, a way of saying, I'm here for you. I remembered the time I drove across town in a snowstorm because Melissa's car wouldn't start, and the time I stayed up all night sewing a last-minute Halloween costume for my grandson. I thought about the holidays I'd hosted, the gifts I'd bought, the way I'd always tried to make everyone feel welcome, even when I felt like an outsider in my own family. And now, I was being told to stay away from Christmas dinner because someone else didn't want me there. Not because I'd done anything wrong, because Melissa's mother-in-law Jeanette had decided I wasn't part of her vision for the perfect holiday. Janet, with her matching napkin rings and her family traditions that seemed to change every year. Janet, who once told me my gravy was a little too thick and who always managed to bring up her son's girlfriend at the most awkward moments. I tried, really tried, to get along with her. But some people just aren't interested in making room at the table. Ladies, have you ever felt like you were being used? Like you were just a walking, talking ATM with a side of mashed potatoes? That morning, as I sat in my quiet house, I realized I was done. Done being the family doormat. Done being the nice mom who always says yes, who always smooths things over, who always puts herself last. I was tired of being taken for granted. Tired of feeling like my only value was in what I could give. I thought about the years I'd spent putting everyone else first. The dreams I'd put on hold, the vacations I'd skipped, the hobbies I'd never started because there was always someone who needed me more. I thought about the way Melissa used to look at me when she was little, like I was her whole world, and how that look had faded over the years, replaced by a kind of casual expectation. Of course Mom will help. Of course Mom will pay. Of course Mom will be there no matter what. But what about me? What about what I wanted? I realized sitting there in the early morning light that I couldn't remember the last time I'd asked myself that question. I'd been so busy making sure everyone else was happy, I'd forgotten to check in on my own happiness. And now, here I was, uninvited from Christmas dinner in the house I'd paid for, by a woman who'd never lifted a finger to help. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. It was like a weight had been lifted, like I'd finally given myself permission to stop trying so hard. I didn't need to fight or argue or beg for a seat at the table. I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone, not to Janet, not to Melissa, not to anyone else. I was enough, just as I was. I got up, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window, watching the sun rise over the frosty lawn. I thought about all the things I could do with my newfound freedom. Maybe I'd take that trip to Florida after all. Maybe I'd spend Christmas with friends, or volunteer at the shelter, or just stay home and watch old movies in my pajamas. For the first time in a long time, the possibilities felt endless. As I sipped my coffee, I smiled to myself. Sometimes the quietest reply is the loudest. Sometimes okay is all you need to say. And sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the freedom to walk away. So, what did I do after that text? Did I cry? Did I sulk? Did I eat an entire box of chocolates? Okay, maybe just a few dark chocolate with sea salt. It's my secret weapon for emotional emergencies. But no, I didn't fall apart. I didn't even let myself spiral into that old familiar pit of self-doubt and guilt. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around my coffee mug, and I let the silence settle. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, but also full of possibility. Like the moment before a big storm or the first page of a new book. I realized I was at a crossroads, and for once, I was the one holding the map. I thought about all the years I'd spent putting everyone else first, about the sacrifices I'd made without a second thought. I remembered the day I signed the papers for that house, the way Melissa hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, the tears in her eyes as she said, "Thank you. Mom, we'll never forget this." I remembered the pride I felt, knowing I could give her family a fresh start, a safe place to grow. But now, sitting in my own kitchen, I wondered if maybe I'd made it too easy for them to forget. Maybe I'd made it too easy for them to take me for granted. That's when it hit me. I didn't have to keep playing the same role. I didn't have to keep giving and giving until there was nothing left for myself. I could make a different choice. I could make my final move. So I picked up the phone and called my realtor. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady. "Hi, remember that house I bought for my daughter? I think it's time we put it back on the market." There was a pause on the other end, the kind of pause that says, "Are you sure?" But I was sure. More sure than I'd been about anything in a long time. The next part was the hardest stand. In a strange way, the most satisfying. I called Melissa. I could hear the chaos of her morning in the background, kids arguing over cereal, the dog barking, the TV blaring cartoons. She answered, sounding distracted. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" I took a deep breath and told her as gently as I could that I decided to sell the house. At first, there was silence. Then confusion. Then panic. You're selling the house. But, Mom, where are we supposed to go? What about the kids? What about Christmas? Her voice was rising, the fear creeping in. Suddenly, Christmas dinner wasn't the only thing she was worried about. The fear in her voice. Priceless. The excitement in mine. Even better. I felt a strange sense of power. Not the kind that comes from controlling others, but the kind that comes from finally standing up for yourself. I explained, calmly and kindly, that I wasn't doing this to punish her. I wasn't being mean, I was being fair. If I wasn't welcome in the home I paid for, maybe it was time for someone else to enjoy it. Or, pay for it themselves. I told her I loved her, that I'd always be there for her, but that I needed to start being there for myself too. I could hear the wheels turning in her head, the realization dawning that actions have consequences. That you can't just take and take without giving something back. The fallout was immediate. My phone started buzzing with calls and texts from Melissa, from Ryan, even from Janet, the infamous mother-in-law herself. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. Everyone wanted to work things out. Janet, who had never once called me for anything other than a recipe or a passive-aggressive comment about my holiday decorations, was now leaving voicemails about family unity and the true meaning of Christmas. I almost laughed. Almost. But I didn't waver. I'd made my decision, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I felt like I'd finally taken my life back. Like I was finally writing my own story instead of just playing a supporting role in someone else's. It wasn't about the house, or the money, or even the Christmas dinner. It was about respect. It was about boundaries. It was about reminding myself and everyone else that I mattered too. I started making plans. I talked to my realtor about listing the house, about what needed to be done to get it ready for sale. I started looking at vacation rentals in Florida, imagining myself back on that beach, toes in the sand. A good book in one hand and a margarita in the other. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in years, made plans for coffee dates and movie nights, and maybe even a little travel. The world felt wide open, full of possibilities I'd forgotten existed. And you know what? I didn't feel guilty, not one bit. I felt proud. Proud of myself for finally drawing a line, for finally saying enough. Proud of myself for showing my daughter and my whole family that love isn't about giving until you're empty. It's about giving from a place of strength, of self-respect, of knowing your own worth. So, no, I didn't cry. I didn't sulk. I didn't eat the whole box of chocolates. Just a few, for good measure. I made my final move, and it was the best decision I'd made in years. And as I watched the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I knew that this Christmas, things were finally going to be different. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what would come next. Word spread faster than a rumor at a church potluck. And if you've ever been to a church potluck, you know that's saying something. It started with Melissa, of course. She called, she texted, she even sent a long, emotional email with the subject line, "Please." Mom, I could practically hear the panic in her voice. The way her words tumbled over each other, desperate to rewind the clock. "We didn't mean it, Mom. It was just a misunderstanding. Janet didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Can't we just talk about this?" Suddenly, the woman who had been so quick to send a 5 a.m. text was now calling at all hours. Her messages growing more frantic as the reality of my decision set in. Ryan, who usually kept his head down and his opinions to himself, tried to play peacemaker. He called me one evening, his voice low and apologetic. "We really appreciate everything you've done for us. You know that, right? Maybe we can figure something out. Maybe Janet can come for dessert, and you can come for dinner." I almost laughed at the negotiation, as if Christmas dinner was a hostage situation and I was the one holding the turkey ransom. I told him I appreciated the call, but my mind was made up. I was done being the afterthought, the backup plan, the one who always made things work for everyone else. And then the cherry on top. Janet herself called. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw her name pop up. For a split second, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind of tone you use when you're trying to sell a used car with a bad transmission. "Oh, I just wanted to clear the air," she said. "You know how these things get blown out of proportion? Family is so important, especially at the holidays. We should all be together." I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. Where was this spirit of family unity when she was telling Melissa I wasn't welcome? I kept it polite, thanked her for her concern, and told her I hoped she had a lovely Christmas. Then I hung up and let out a laugh that felt like it had been building for years. The truth is, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt free. Not just free from the obligations and expectations that had weighed me down, but free from the guilt that always seemed to follow me around like a shadow. I realized I'd spent so many years trying to keep the peace, trying to make everyone happy, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to make myself happy. I'd been so busy setting the table for everyone else that I'd never sat down to enjoy the meal. So I made a new plan. I called up a few friends women who had been there for me through thick and thin. Who knew how to laugh until their sides hurt, and who didn't care if the napkins matched the tablecloth. We decided to have our own Christmas dinner, potluck style. No drama, no politics, no one keeping score. Just good food, good wine, and the kind of laughter that makes you forget about everything else. And the best part? I didn't have to do the dishes. I didn't have to worry about whether the gravy was too thick or if the green bean casserole was too adventurous. I just got to be myself, surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. And you know what else? I finally booked that trip to Florida. I found a little cottage right on the beach, just like the one of my dreams. I packed a suitcase full of sundresses and books, left my phone on silent, and spent a week doing exactly what I wanted. I walked along the shore every morning, letting the waves wash over my feet and the sun warm my face. I read novels on the porch, sipped coffee as the pelicans flew by, and let myself breathe for the first time in years. Turns out the beach is even better when you're not footing someone else's mortgage. Of course. There were moments when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. There were moments when the old guilt crept in, whispering that maybe I should have just let it go, that maybe I was being too harsh. But then I'd remember the look on Melissa's face when I told her about the sale. The way she suddenly realized that I wasn't just a safety net she could take for granted. I'd remember the relief I felt, the lightness in my chest. The sense that I was finally living my own life instead of just supporting everyone else's. So, let me ask you, have you ever been taken for granted? Have you ever felt like you were just a supporting character in someone else's story? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you make the same move, or would you play it safe, keep the peace, and swallow your own needs for the sake of family unity? I don't have all the answers. I'm still figuring it out, one day at a time. But I do know this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Sometimes the best gift you can give your family is the example of a woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to stand up for it. And sometimes the happiest Christmas is the one where you finally get to sit at the table you set for yourself. If you've ever felt the way I did, I hope my story gives you the courage to make your own move, whatever that looks like for you. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales about finding your voice, setting boundaries, and living life on your own terms. Because ladies, we've earned it.